You're watching E.T.N, where we don't do news, we just talk entertainment. Share and subscribe.
Hey guys, welcome to Entertainment Talk Nation. This is Rob. This video, we're going to do another Godzilla King of the Monsters discussion. And this one, we're going to talk about Ghidorah and whether or not he plays a pivotal role or is the sole reason as to whether or not Godzilla will be a successful movie. And this has been something that's been lingering in my mind ever since we've been discussing it a lot. Cause, you know, he comes up a lot. Obviously, we know that whether he's in the sequel or whether he pops up later on down the road, that he is going to be the big bad. He's going to be the primary villain. And, what's interesting is, assuming he's going to be in Godzilla King of the Monsters, I said to myself, wow, I mean, will his role be pivotal to the point that it determines whether or not Godzilla 2 or Godzilla King of the Monsters is a success? And I think it does in some ways. I don't think it'll be a huge, well, then again, I don't know. I was going to say, I don't think it'll be a huge detriment to the movie if he doesn't work out well, if he doesn't look good or doesn't have a fairly good role or a good story. But I don't think it helps the movie either. You know, when you talk about some of the best movies out there and some of the best villains that more or less make the movie, you can quickly name a few off the top of your head. Darth Vader, you know, Voldemort from the Harry Potter series. You know, villains play such a big role. And I think that Ghidorah has to be sold really good. I really do think that if they do him right in terms of how he looks, a good story, and some of the things he does in the movie, I really do think it's going to enhance and further make Godzilla King of the Monsters a big success. And if that doesn't happen, I still think we'll see some success with the sequel. I just don't think it'll be as big. Because I still think, and I still fairly predict that Rodan will be the fodder of the movie at some point. And even if he doesn't die, he won't have, the kind of moment that I think a Ghidorah is going to have, that I think Mothra is going to have, and that we all know that Godzilla will have at some point or another. The other question too is if he does come into this sequel, because again, there's still no guarantee that Ghidorah is going to be in Godzilla King of the Monsters. We might just get two monsters. But this is all assuming that he's going to be in the sequel. I do think he's going to play a huge role, and I do think that the success of the sequel really rides on how well they do this monster, because there's a lot, let's not be honest, there's a lot that can go wrong. A bad design, okay? Remember, this is a monster that does have 3 heads, does traditionally have 2 tails, and does not have any kind of, I don't want to say, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say arms, but he doesn't have any kind of, you know, when you look at Ghidorah from the old movies, you know, in one hand, he looks very, very cool, but on the other hand, he almost looks handicapped. Because he's got his feet, he's got his wings, but his wings really don't have anything on them that could help him grip or do anything significant. Like when you see a dragon like Smaug from the Lord of the Rings universe, he can fold his wings in and he's, you know what I mean? He's kind of got, he has a way that he can grip or do whatever. I do think the Ghidorah in the Legendary Verse is going to have that. I almost feel like they have to do it. If they're going to design him to be dragon-like, because Ghidorah is very dragon-like in his, you know, the scales and all that, I almost think you have to do that. It's very silly to just have wings spread out that don't retract. You know what I mean? Even though with Ghidorah, we saw that for so long that we've forgiven that. It's almost become the norm. But in talking for the general audience, I do think this version of Ghidorah has to have retracting wings. The question is, how is he going to look with retracting wings? Because when you really sit down and think about it, a monster of that size with 3 heads, you retract the wings, then he kind of looks a little bit funny. You know, at least that's how I'm picturing it. I'm sure it's something they can fix. I'm sure it's something they'll design over and over until they get it right. So it'll be interesting, but I think the design will have a big effect. Presentation is key. I really think presentation is probably the biggest, if not at least the second biggest thing when it comes to Ghidorah being successful in this movie and contributing to the success of Godzilla 2. And you know, again, going back to the argument for the big bads, you know, once again, I mentioned Darth Vader, I mentioned Voldemort, you know, those kind of big villains. In the movie Agent Smith from The Matrix, he's a huge villain in that series. You know, he's got to have that kind of effect. You know, Heath Ledger's Joker is another great example of a great villain in a movie. Ghidorah has to have that kind of effect on this movie. He's got to have the kind of effect on this movie where he's stealing the show from Godzilla. Even though we're all rooting for Godzilla, even though we all want to see Godzilla win, we're going to appreciate the villainy of King Ghidorah. And I think it's the kind of flavor that Ghidorah needs that he's never really gotten before. You know, in the Tohoverse, yeah, I guess you could call it that now. He's always been one of the big bads, right? And for the most part, when he's faced Godzilla, he's never really faced Godzilla alone, which is understandable. He's always been a big monster. You needed Rodan, you needed other monsters and destroyer monsters to help take him down. I get it. But, pardon me, I'm yawning over here because the last few days I haven't gotten much sleep. But counter to that, when we've seen Godzilla face him one-on-one, as we did in the 90s, Godzilla really didn't have a hard time with him. In fact, Godzilla beat his ass pretty good. And I've always felt that Ghidorah, even though he's always been considered one of the big bads in the Toho world, he never really got that, I don't know, he never really had that moment of dominance. He was always presented as a dominant monster, but he's always fairly lost pretty easily. You know, destroy all monsters, I mean, can't blame him there. He was outnumbered like 9-1. And obviously in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, he was pretty dominating. That was his debut movie. He was fairly dominating, but he still, once again, faced 3 monsters. But when you put Ghidorah up against one monster, I think it's the kind of battle that he should dominate through and through, and he only loses because he makes one big blunder that costs him the match and makes him lose. But when you see him one-on-one against Godzilla in the 90s, Godzilla beats his ass pretty good. And then in GMK, he's on the end of having a team. You know, he has Baragon, he has Mothra, and Godzilla is the one who's overwhelmed, and Godzilla still beats his ass pretty good. So I really hope in this movie, I want Ghidorah to be a dominating force. I want the fight against him to be a struggle, whether it's Rodan and Mothra and Godzilla fighting against him, or whether it's Godzilla fighting against him one-on-one later in another movie or in this movie, whatever. I think Ghidorah should be a force to be reckoned with, and the only reason he loses is because he makes a blunder, he makes a mistake, or something like that. But I do think that Ghidorah will contribute to the success in a big way to whatever Godzilla movie he's going to be in, whether it's the next one coming out or one later down the road. But assuming he's going to be in the sequel, I think the movie will be better off if he is designed properly, if he is presented in a way that is just unthinkable. When you think about the grand scale of this monster and what he represents, I really, really think that teasing him, building him up, and then having a great payoff with a great design and powers and abilities that would just scare the shit out of people, I think that's the way to go. I'm hoping they do that, and I think it'll make the movie much better. And we'll see. You know, it's going to be interesting. I think presentation and story are going to be a big key, and battle dominance. You know, make him a nasty, badass monster that people look at. You know, they should really push it to the point that they make people leave the theater thinking to themselves, damn, can you imagine if something like that was real? I'd be scared shit. that's the kind of effect Ghidorah should have. You know, that's the kind of effect we were hoping from the Godzilla movie. We didn't get that. And it's not that that was disappointing. Maybe it's a good thing now in the long run. But that's the effect I think this Ghidorah should have on the audience when he's in the next movie. So we'll see. What do you guys think? How do you feel about Ghidorah's effect on the success of the next Godzilla movie, whether he's in King of Monsters or anyone? Do you think it doesn't matter? Do you think Godzilla is pretty much the reason people are going to go, which he is? But do you think if a nice, presented, story-filled, scary Ghidorah, and I'm talking build him up to be a villain on the cusp of Agent Smith, the Joker from The Dark Knight, Voldemort from Harry Potter, and Vader from Star Wars, something to that effect. Will it enhance the movie and make it a bigger success? I think it will. Let me know in the comments what you think. Until the next video, this is Rob signing off for E.T.N, where we don't do news, we just talk entertainment. Take it easy.
Thank you for watching E.T.N. You can follow E.T.N on Facebook, Twitch or Twitter, or join the Nation Facebook page. Don't forget to click that subscribe button on your way out.